Alrighty, fight fans, it's time again, and sitting with me today is Kyle Provenzano, co-owner of Schott's Gym right here in Albany, New York. Kyle, thanks a bunch for doing this and sitting down with me.
No problem.
Tell me a little bit about the path that led you to becoming a pro boxing and pro MMA trainer.
It's funny because a lot of people who coach other sports like football, baseball, basketball, a lot of them are phys ed teachers, which I actually am a phys ed teacher, but they do that. They have coaching clinics, and there's a path to doing that. Whereas you want to become a boxing coach, it's kind of like there's not a lot of coaching clinics. It's not like a lot of boxing trainers are very guarded in what they do unless you're in the gym. So it was a long haul. Just again, as a fighter, always loved the sport. I was lucky enough when I stopped competing that the coach that trained me, Andy Schott and Andy Farragon, allowed me to help them out with their fighters. And I always loved the sport, the one-on-one aspect, and I was able to get a lot of experience in the gym with good fighters as a glorified bucket guy. Then they started letting me hold pads for some of the fighters, and I started working some of the corners. Mm-hmm. And it was really an apprenticeship, I would say, because you can have a lot of understanding about the sport, but in the gym, day in and day out, the things you do with fighters: when do they spar? When do they not spar? How do you build the condition up, building their confidence up, things of that nature. Mm-hmm. And with those guys, I also got to see a lot of other gyms, a lot of other coaches. Mm-hmm. So I always wanted to be a coach. I liked it. They encouraged me when I got done competing. Again, I had a short amateur career, nothing, crazy, but I was, as a fighter, I was decent. And then when I got done, they told me, I think you could be a good coach. Andy Farragon, I think was the one that brought it up. Gary Wilcox, another fighter that we worked was a good pro. And then Andy Schott also, if you want to give this a shot, you can come help us out. It's free labor for them, which, holding pads. And if you have a young guy who's enthusiastic, who's willing to learn, it helps. I do that here now. I got some other amateur fighters helping me out, and they're kind of doing the same thing. That really is what got me there. And then any successes that we had after that, we just kind of built off that and just, but I learned from them how to work with fighters, how to deal with people, how to deal with all different kinds of personalities, different situations. And that's really what got me there. And it just kind of blossomed from there.
What do you think the main or best ingredients are for a successful boxing coach or MMA striking coach?
Patience. Because you got to deal with a lot of BS.
You said that quickly.
Yeah. You got to deal with a lot of BS, especially in the pro game. If you're not signed to a top promoter. I mean, look, if you're fighting in UFC, they're treating their people good. I mean, I know some people complain, but you're getting good accommodations. Mm-hmm. There's not stuff happening. In boxing, if you're the golden prospect of Top Rank or matchroom boxing, you're getting treated well. If an opponent falls out, they're finding a replacement, so forth and so on. The lower level, and not even low level, just the other people, there's not millions of dollars at stake, you're dealing with fights falling out. Shows getting canceled because fights fall out. Opponents changing all the time. Short money. Fighters getting injured. Fighters not passing physicals. I mean, it's just a headache on top of a headache. You have to have patience. And then, you have to have an ability to deal with people and talk to people. And your personality is not always going to be right for that fighter. And it's a lot of time on task. It's a lot of time spent in the gym doing stuff with not even a fight scheduled to get better. And that is the boring part. That is the part where you have to kind of embrace. And the fight week, once you get a date, 6-7 weeks out, that's when it becomes, all right, now it counts. This is kind of fun. We're putting something together. But I'd say patience and understanding personalities and things of that nature, day in and day out, being here. You can't be a successful coach in this sport, or most sports, doing it once or twice a week. You have to be in the gym.
Well,
working with a lot of people.
Yeah, you've spoken about the coaching side. What about on the fighter side? Tell me, what are some of the, aside from technical ability, what are some of the intangibles that you look for?
The technical side obviously is important, but other than that, there's a lot of people that are athletic and skilled. and can throw good punches. And you watch them shadow box in the heavy bag, and you're like,
Right.
Somebody comes in the gym who doesn't really have a background in the sport. They look at that, oh, that guy or girl looks like.
Excuse me, I should have said, aside from the physical qualities of a boxer, what are some of the other aspects that you look at? Maybe some of the intangibles?
Yes. Work ethic. Obviously, work ethic. If you don't have a hardcore work ethic, you can't do the sport. If you don't have hardcore discipline, if you don't have the ability to not eat junk food and drink for 6, 7, 8 weeks at a time, then I don't want to deal with it. You know what I mean? It's not even worth the time. You have to be somebody that can deal with obstacles. Again, fights falling out. You can't get up too overly emotional about every bad situation that happens, because boxing MMA is almost the Wild West of sports. It's not as controlled as football, baseball, basketball. It's not as fair. You don't have a schedule set where you're playing this team. Some people have to come up a harder way than a tougher way. So you need people that can deal with adversity, work ethic, coachable. Some fighters have more of that than others, depending. Some have more work ethic but they also they're very emotional with things. So you have to kind of find that, but you need, kind of what anybody would really think. I mean, but again, it's a marathon, not a sprint. You got to be in the gym every day for years, and you finally might be able to get that result you want after time. But that's it. Patience, work ethic, obviously, a grit about you that makes you a little bit different than the average person.
That makes sense. Do you have a progression that you bring your fighters through? I know every fighter's different, but do you have maybe like a basic template?
I do. I train most of the people similar. Depending on the styles, obviously, I'm not going to train a 5'7" puncher the same as I train a 6'4" jabber. But we're shadow boxing, we're jumping rope, we're hitting heavy bags, we're hitting mitts. In the middle of doing those things, I may point out different things to different fighters. I'm holding mitts for a person that's long and lean with a good jab. I'm going to do different stuff in the past than I would do with somebody who's short and stocky, who's a puncher. But the template is very similar. Shadow box, run, spar, heavy bag, slip bag, things like that. Core, neck. I'm old school with it. I don't really I don't mind strength and conditioning, but too many of these fighters, in my opinion, nowadays, are more worried about getting to the strength and conditioning coach than improving their boxing game in the gym. You see fighters in the 50s who everybody talks about how athletes have developed. Fighters in the 50s were doing 15-round fights 8, 9 times a year and with tons of energy, and all they did was run, spar, shadow box, jump rope. And fighters now have strength and conditioning coaches.
Excuse me.
They have nutritionists and dietitians, and they're gassing after 8 rounds in a world title fight. So I don't think that, not that stuff's bad, there's a place for it. But I'm not, if my fighter is rushing out of the boxing gym to get to the strength and conditioning coach, I have a problem with that. So I like the old school. I think for boxing, especially boxing, MMA is a little different. There's a lot of different aspects to grappling and all stuff they have to do. But when I have my MMA fighters in there for striking, they do a lot of the same things the boxers do. Inside games are a little different because in boxing there's no takedowns. But for the most part, without getting too in-depth detail, they all do similar exercises, similar things. They just may do it a little bit differently depending on who they are.
You alluded to kind of personal or personality management a little bit.
Yeah.
Have you ever had any fighters that have the skill set, but for whatever reason struggle with following your directions?
Unfortunately, yes. Probably more so than the ones who do follow. Again, it's easy as somebody who's their first amateur fight to get them to listen to you because they're scared, they're nervous, and it's almost like, okay. But then people get harder to control the more success they have, usually. Not all the time. You're hoping for.
We hope that wasn't a fighter that just went down.
Yeah, I don't know what that was. But again, I've had a lot of fighters that have been through the amateurs, were very coachable, and then they turn pro to success and they become uncoachable. And usually it didn't go that well after that.
Really? Why do you think that is? You think there's like a little something in the head that changes and suddenly they're not able to be mentored anymore?
Yeah, I don't, everybody's different. But anytime you're in a relationship, especially, you're in the gym with these guys and girls as much as you're with your family almost. So, anytime you're with somebody day in and day out, and a lot of times it's not fun, you're pushing them, it's hard, you don't have a lot of screen matches, but there's sometimes conversations back and forth. It's like any relationship with somebody every day in and day out, and especially an athlete might start thinking they know it all. Well, this works better. I don't know, but other fighters, don't get me wrong, pros, I've had them for years, look at me in the eye, whatever yes, coach, you know what I mean? And those are the ones who usually make it. And that's not just because they're with me. Any coach will tell you that, obviously. The less coachable a fighter becomes, the longer it goes, the harder it's going to get for success. I've heard crazy stories talking to trainers about, I can name world champions, that stories were told me in confidence, but stories about world champions in training camps, and you just shake your head at some of the stuff that went on.
Really?
Talking big fights, yeah, and oh wow, I didn't know that. You know what I mean?
That's amazing. Yeah.
It's. But I think all professional athletes with some success start becoming a little less coachable, I think, because they kind of learn a lot themselves. But the great ones, I think, still work on getting better and rely on their coaches to do that.
How do you go about devising a fight plan?
That's an interesting question, because obviously depending on the fight and who we're fighting, how much information is out there. And the amateurs, it's a little more difficult because the amateurs are trying to get experience. I'm not as worried about developing this big game plan for a regular amateur fight. Now, if I know we're fighting a top guy or girl, we go to a national tournament, this is the person we're fighting next, we might look a little bit of it over and do it. But usually amateurs, you're fighting so often, you're just training to get better in the gym and get in great shape. Spar different styles. And the amateurs, I want guys and girls sparring righties, lefties, punchers, boxers. Whereas if I have a pro, we have 6, 7, 8 weeks to prepare for one style, and I know he or she is fighting an aggressive fighter, I would want the sparring to mirror that, the bag work to mirror that, stuff like that. I do watch video if it's available in the pros, not a ton, because I do think styles and game plans change. I want to know basic things: how tall, righty or lefty, how aggressive, do they have a history of maybe gassing out, or do they come out fast, or do they finish strong, things like that. I'm not going to necessarily watch a fight and say, oh, well, when he throw the jab, he threw the right hand hook, because again, depending on who's in front of them, that could change. One of the basic things, puncher or a boxer, tall or short, right or left, what are their strengths? Is conditioning a strength? Or if you set a fast pace, will they gas out? Things like that I'll prepare for. But just as much of that to me is just getting them in great shape, getting them mentally prepared, which is just as important, more important than the physical preparation. That to me would be the main thing. Again, I'm not studying, like football coaches studying film for 4 or 5, 6 hours. Those guys are in the office studying film all the time. Analytics, baseball, you know what I mean? I think there's a place for that in those sports. I think they take it too far, especially in baseball from the analytics. I think sometimes somebody's been around the sport for 40 years, I think can usually just look at the situation and figure it out. And same with boxing, I think the more you do it, it's like anything. Some real good trainers I know that I've seen can watch. I'll sat with some of them, and after a round or two, pick little things up and I continue to do as much as I can. I try to soak up as much knowledge as I can from other trainers that I respect. There's a lot of them. Some names people will know. There's a ton of great trainers out there that nobody's ever heard of.
Right.
They're not in Vegas. They're not in Los Angeles. They're not in New York City. They're in Columbus, Ohio, or Albany, New York, or Bridgeport, Connecticut, or Danbury, Connecticut. Places they're not going to have the cream of the crop. 1,000 kids coming every day. So they may never work with a world champion. You put them in Vegas in the Mayweather gym, they're going to have a world champion. But for whatever reason, maybe they have a family, they have a job, they can't do that. So there's a ton of great trainers out there. Some of the best trainers in the country right now, you might not even know their names, and I might not even know their names.
I might know their name. Kyle Provenzano.
Well, I don't know. I appreciate that. I love it, and I've been doing it a long time, and we've had a lot of success. Luckily, I'm working with great people. My partner Andy Schott, is a huge help and motivation for me, and the fighters we have. But again, I have I can name a couple trainers right off the top of my head that if you put them in the right situation. Andy Schott, could work with a world champion in a heartbeat. but it's not overly important to him. He likes his life. He doesn't want to go in an 8-week training camp in California with people he might not even get along with.
Doesn't want to dedicate his life to.
Me too. You know what I mean?
rigor.
I got bills to pay and stuff. I got things I got to take care of. You know, so that's a lot of it. You know, you're learning from other people. I kind of went off on the question, but I hope I answered it.
No, we can edit most of that out. Just teasing.